would like to welcome everybody for joining us to this great session with engineer Harry Bolner. This is the third presentation for us. It seems we never have enough to hear him and learn from him. His video with us are watched widely and led other institutions to follow to invite him. I would like to start this session by inviting our dear Rabbi Maimon Pinto to give us his blessing. Rabbi Pinto, bechavod, bevakasha.
Thank you, Gladys. Thank you for that introduction. Gladys, a few moments ago, told me that I give her strength, but the truth is that all of you give me strength for being here. Gladys, thank you so much for organizing yet another beautiful program. I'll just share a few words with you, as I promised in the past, about a short idea in Pirkei Avot. In Pirkei Avot, it says, Da me'ayin bata ve'le'an ata olech. Know where you come from and where you are going. There's many explanations to what that means, and on a simple sense, it has a very religious connotation to it. But it also has a very historical connotation to it when we really think about it. Mi'ayin bata is that each one of us has to remember where they come from. And we have to remember where we are going. My understanding of this part of Pirkei Avot is telling me that in order to know where we are truthfully going, we have to know where we came from. We have to know our past, go back to our roots, and discover our own personal journey. I remember once being at the airport and I missed one of my flights, and I had about 4 or 5 hours to burn. And I was walking around the airport and I found this book, very small book. It was called L'Histoire de tout le monde, the history of the entire world. Basically covered from the time of creation, and it was a very small pocket book, Livre de Poche, from the series of Livre de Poche. And it covered from the time of creation until what we call modern day history. And what's fascinating is this book was written by Guillaume Laplante and Jean-François Cordaire. It's a book, and in the introduction, after giving a very long kind of intro about the importance of history, they wanted to give an example how history is passed on from generation to generation, and how it's so important to relate it to the future generations. And what I found quite impressive is that the example that they gave, Jean-Claude and Guillaume, was the Seder night. The Seder of Pesach, when we sit at the table, it was unbelievable. As I'm reading this book that I bought at the airport, and Guillaume and Jean-Claude are telling me the way to relate our history is when we sit at the Seder table and we repeat the story of our people over and over every year. And we relate it to our children, and like it says, Veshinanta levanecha. So I think this is an idea of relating and going back to our roots is a collective idea. The Seder Pesach is a collective, our own collective history as we left Egypt and the Exodus. But the Torah also tells us, and this idea in Pirkei Avot teaches us, that we all, except for our collective history, all have to look back into our roots as individuals and try to connect back to where we come from in order to strengthen our identity, our Jewish identity, and our identity as all single individuals. So with no further ado, I'd like to thank Gladys here to invite Harry, and he will share with us his personal journey of his identity and going back to his roots. And I wanted to take this opportunity to also thank Gladys for all the work that she's doing. And every week so far, trying to bring us speakers that we should get inspired. And it's very inspiring to see people every week come and learn a little bit more and connect to our community. I give you my blessing. God bless you all and enjoy the beautiful session.
Rabbi, thank you for that.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was a great few words that you gave us. It will empower us through this session. Thank you so much. I would like to invite now our Sandra Kuku. She introduced to me Harry Bolner, and now she will say a few words about his biography. Sandra Kuku, bevakasha bechavod.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Gladys, for giving us a platform, a safe space to share and to be together. It's very precious. We've had Harry Bolner twice already, and we're not going to let go of him. He's such a learned scholar and such a beautiful soul. He fits right into our group because he's all about curiosity and adventure and learning and sharing. He spoke to us about the stans, the 5 Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, all these beautiful stans. It was such a beautiful travelogue. So now, a little about him, we all know, but for those who are new, Harry was born in Romania, emigrated to Israel with his parents in 1951. They settled in Jaffa, where he attended the Scottish school in Old Jaffa, where his parents found employment. It is the oldest school in Israel. It was founded in 1863. He served in the military as an officer and participated in the 6-day and Yom Kippur Wars, which he shared with us in another PowerPoint. It was fascinating. Following military service and graduation at the Technion in Haifa in electrical engineering, he traveled to Europe and stopped in Bremen, Germany, where he worked for 4+ years as a computer design engineer. Since 1977, Harry settled in Canada, married in 1979 to Francine, and resides in Brossard, Quebec. His North American career was in information technology, entrepreneurship, management, and consulting. Harry is a member of the South Shore Jewish community, where he serves as vice president together with Honorable Jacques Saada, who is president. On retirement, Harry embarked on a tour to discover his roots in northern Romania and the labor camps of World War II, his father recounted. Among his hobbies are photography, history, travel, and giving presentations of his experience.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you very much. Now I would like to present for you our engineer, Harry Bolner, to give us his great presentation. We are all full with expectations. Thank you, Harry, for coming again to us. Thank you so much. So, Harry
Thank
Bolner,
you. Toda rabba. Good morning, bonjour, shalom to all of you. I would like to thank the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of Montreal and the Women's Learning Group, Gladys Moalem and Sandra Kuku, who just introduced me, both Eshet Chayil, that I heard that they have been nominated, and my salutations to the Rabbi Maimon Pinto for the wonderful introduction. Da me'ain bata le'ain le'ata olech, ata olech. That's exactly what we're talking about here. More about me'ain bata rather than le'ain ata olech. And I hope you're all feeling well and vaccinated and staying safe. I always wondered what is the origin of my family name. What's my ancestry? When you move from a country, I was born in Romania, moved to Israel, you start a new life, You don't look in your rear mirror, you look more forward in what you're doing. It's school, it's the army, it's university, and you don't pause to look at where you're coming from and what was your past, your family. And it's interesting, all of us over here are not generations in Canada. We have all come from somewhere or Jewish communities in the world where we've been pushed out by either persecutions, pogroms, wars, or just economic looking for a better life. My father served during the Second World War in camps, I wasn't sure, concentration camps, labor camps. How come he came out alive? All those questions were bothering me, and I put it on my bucket list. One day I'm going to find out. I cannot let it go. I got to know what happened. We left everything behind us. We left Romania with 2 suitcases of 20 kilos each, and we came to Israel in 1951. There was nothing there. I know Gladys also is an immigrant, came to Shara al near Haifa in 1951. We were in the same camps with Iraqi Jews and Yemenites and all over, people coming to that place. And what was Romanian Holocaust? What was Romania? What is my background? If people ask me today, where are you from? I say I'm Israeli. Yeah, but were you born in Israel? No, I was born in Romania, but I consider myself Israeli. It's something of my past, but having left at the age of 5 years old, it's difficult to say I'm really Romanian. I speak Romanian, like Romanian food, I like Romanian music, but I'm Israeli. So, without much ado, I'll start the presentation. And thank you all for being here to listen to my personal story. So this is the map of Eastern Europe, and you'll find over here Ukraine, the modern borders of Ukraine over here, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania. Bordering Romania, you'll find Bulgaria, Serbia, former Yugoslavia. Somebody asked earlier on about Bosnia-Herzegovina. It's over here, surrounded by Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro. And the tour I made was from Odessa into Republic of Moldova, which is this area over here, and into northeastern Romania, which includes Old Moldova and half of Bukovina, which I will talk to about later. Bucharest is down here. This is part of Transylvania. We'll go over that, okay? Why search for my background? I was born in Falticeni, which is in northern Romanian Moldova, and I decided I've got to visit the place, and if I'm going to visit that area, knowing that the Holocaust happened also all the way to Odessa, why not start one way, going from Odessa, which is in Ukraine, on the Black Sea, and head out east rather than go back and forth along the tour. So I started off, my planning was from Odessa to go westwards into Moldova and into Romania to discover. I really did not know much what I'm looking for. I was looking for labor camps. I heard about Transnistria. Where was that? Genealogy. I have no birth certificates of grandparents, not even my parents. I need to know more about the place where I'm coming from. I visited the cemetery in the past in Romania in '73, and I knew the place. Luckily, I did it with my father, that he could guide me around. So now I'm looking for more details about things that I did not know, and as you get older, you ask yourself those questions. I had to get some support to find that, and I was first given impetus by Merle Kastner, who was the vice president at the time of the Jewish Genealogical Society in Montreal. There is such an organization in Montreal. Yefim Kogan was introduced to me. He's Jewish Genealogical Society Bessarabia, which is today modern Moldova. A cousin of mine, Elliot Sorel in Washington, who guided me also through those things and introduced me to Dr. Radu Ioanid, who was director at the time of the International Archival Program at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. And recently, last year, he was appointed, strangely, but we're excited, as Romanian ambassador to Israel. So imagine from being a director at the United States Holocaust Memorial to being Romanian ambassador to Israel. Who knows more about the Holocaust than this gentleman? Dr. Irina Shehova was introduced to me too. She's former curator of the Jewish Museum in Chisinau, Republic of Moldova. Chisinau is the capital, or Kishinev in Russian or Ukrainian. And today she's director of Heritage Moldova, and the site is magi.org. She introduced me to Yuri Zagorcha, who is a retired history teacher in Edinets. Beno Zalmanovic, who worked in the camps. Luckily, I have him. He lives in New York. He's an older person, and he did the camps with my father, so he could add extra information about the camps where they were. Virgiliu Lupu is a professor, a teacher in Falticeni, Romania, and I met him when I was in Romania, and he is the best friend with Professor Elliot Sorel, who lost his father during the war, and Virgiliu Lupu, his family, took him in, and he's kind of a brother to Professor Elliot Sorel. All interesting connections. And in the end, after this whole thing, I was introduced on virtually on the internet to Robert Steinman, the president of the Jewish community of Falticeni, Romania. But I never met him in person. Romania had a Holocaust. Very few people know about Romania, and even less about the Romanian Holocaust. There's a famous Romanian you all heard about, is Elie Wiesel. He is from the Hungarian part of Romania, Transylvania, and he wrote a series of books, one of the Night Trilogy, Night, Dawn, Day, about the war. He wrote other books too. And the Holocaust in Romania, as I mentioned by Dr. Radu Ionid, which describes the Holocaust in Romania, the destruction of Jews and Gypsies under the Antonescu regime. This is really the most important book on the Holocaust, Romanian Holocaust. I mentioned why I was looking for Romania, the background, and it always amazed me how whole communities, and that's not special to Romania, that happened in all kinds of places. It happened in the Arab world after 1948, after 67, or the Muslim world, where Jewish communities were expelled, certainly in Ukraine, Lithuania, and those places that were destroyed. And in 1960s, Romania started opening up its borders to Jews, and that's another story how they got out of Romania. And they came to Israel, and they immediately came to see my father, who was sort of a leader in the community, and he served with them in the camps in the Second World War. And I was a kid at home hearing stories about them, about the war, but really not into it as I was getting into Israeli society, and I wasn't listening to those stories. And I had little knowledge of my birthplace and so on. So in 2016, I decided to make a project to search for my roots. My objectives was to visit my original home, Falticeni in Romania, of course, search ancestors, family tree, find out if I know from the origin of my family name, which is very rare. By the way, Bolner is the only such family name in all of Canada. So if it's spelled right, nobody can miss me in any database in Canada. And this, I heard names like Alexandrine and Kafa. I didn't know what they were. Uncles talked about it, my father talked about it, but no idea whatsoever. So let's go find out what happened and so on. I'll start presenting my family here. My father, Joseph, that's about 1936, married my mother, Bela, and that's both of them married in Falticeni, Romania. I was born in 1946. A picture of me here, 6 months old, and a bit chubby, as babies are. And in 1951, we immigrated to Israel, and you see we're still wearing, in the 20 kilos of suitcases we had, we still could pack a suit for my mother, a tailleur, my mother and my father and myself. I was wearing shorts over here, and this is my uncle from Haifa. And on the paternal side, my family, they are all born in Falticeni, except my grandmother, who is a Reicher, and probably born in Falticeni too. I couldn't find that out yet. And I have here the oldest brother. My father is here. Youngest sister, who there's a story about her later. She moved from Austria to France to Cuba and Mexico. My uncle Isaac or Jeannot, who went to Paris, a doctor, and my aunt Ida Bolner. These are all, and that's her husband. Okay, and that's my grandfather, and in 1929, and he's 65 years old in this picture. He looks pretty old. He's holding a cane, and my grandmother. The family business was, I heard, was in livestock. I'll talk more about it. It's Falticeni became a agricultural town where they would have a big fair where people would come from all over the region to buy and sell livestock, cows, horses, sheep, whatever. And they also had lumber mills, a family on my father's side, in a place called Shaska, which I believe is Bukovina, Moldova area, and Bacău, which is in Moldova. My father owned, with his brother, he owned a sawmill over there. They're mostly middle class, not very religious. I did not know about their birthplaces and dates, source of the Bolner name, and how did they survive the Holocaust. They all survived the Holocaust. On my maternal side, the family business was a tavern. They made their alcohol. It was like the modern day, what should I call it, Starbucks. You know, you go there, you meet people over there, you have a drink with them. In Quebec, you'd call it tavern or brasserie. In Russian or Ukrainian, you call it kirchuma. And business is typically conducted. So imagine you have a fair, people buying and selling things, and then you say, okay, let's close the deal, let's have a drink and close the deal. So they sealed the drink with a thing, and my mother's side of the business, my maternal side of the business, had 2 or 3, every brother had a tavern as such in Falticeni, middle class. Life before the war was good. This is my mother here with her sister Marieta at Vatra Dornei, which is on a river called Bistrița, and they even had a casino there. Can you imagine a casino in Romania in the 1930s? The middle class, the upper class used to go there, and they had cafes and restaurants and so on. And oh yeah, and over here the same picture, my mother and her sister over here before the war. My family sawmill in Bacău, Romania, also in Moldova, is seen here. We visited, he wanted to see it. It's his first time he's back in Romania after 1951, in 1973, and I'm here with him visiting, seeing his former sawmill, which was taken away from him after the Jews were put in camps in 1941. And then, of course, they took away things from here, machinery and so on for the war. And then he tried to rebuild it after the war, and it was confiscated by the communists. So by that time, there was no future for him or my family. So they decided to leave to the new Israel, which was founded in 1948. And we made it by the time we got permission and so on. We got into 1951 in Israel. Here's a map of Romania between the wars. This is the greatest part, Romania, the biggest Romania in 500 years, as Romania, of course, because before that there were different provinces and not or kingdoms, and not a real big Romania as we see over here. Bukovina is over here. Today it's split in half over here around this area, this taking part of Ukraine. That's history, Chernouts. And Falticeni is over here. Between the wars it was in the county of Baia. Now it's in the county of Suceava, which is actually Bukovina. This the Romanians will call it the kingdom. The blue part called the kingdom. This used to belong before that to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Bessarabia moved back and forth between various countries, as you'll see soon. Transylvania is over here, which was taken over by Romania in the First World War when the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was taken apart. Maramuresh was also the same thing. Sigets and Satu Mare. If you've heard about the rabbi of Satmar, Satu Mare, that's over here. That's Satmar. Satu Mare means the big village in Romanian. That's the rabbi and the Hasidic group from Satmar. About Falticeni. It was founded about 1774 by Jews. It was the first settlement by Jews in Romania. First settlement. Originally by Chabad and Sadgora Hasidim. Sadgora came from Ukraine, Chabad too. And in 1780, it was by then a first organized community with a synagogue and cemetery. And you can see the Jewish population of here, 1800s, going up to 57, 67, 1859, a big influx of Jews, and then going down gradually between the wars, stabilizing over here, and 4700 in 1944, surprisingly survived the war, and refugees came in back over here, and then going down over here, and today there are only 5 Jews left in Falticeni. And that was a place that was majority Jews in Falticeni, founded by Jews, and so on. It had a community with a hospital, Jewish hospital, 11 synagogues, a Talmud Torah, 2 schools for boys and girls. It was the border town between the Kingdom of Romania and Bukovina, which was Austro-Hungarian. Its economy was trade, agriculture, livestock. The annual fair was renowned in the region. The first pogrom, 1821, at the same time happened in Odessa by Greek revolutionaries. At the time it was under Ottoman rule, but autonomous, who demanded money from the Jews to fight the Turks, the Ottomans. The Jews didn't respond, so they committed a pogrom on the Jews for not supporting the revolution. The Jews lived well under the Ottomans. Actually, many Jews from the Spanish Inquisition were invited, not many, they were all invited to join the Ottoman Empire. The Sultan at the time invited them to come over into the Ottoman Empire and to enrich the Ottoman Empire. They respected the Jews, and Jews went all the way into Crimea, into Romania, but most famously they went into Thessaloniki, Greece, and they spread all over, some even reaching Iraq. So that was the Greeks from the Sephardim from the Inquisition, which spread along the Mediterranean basin, as they went to Egypt, or they went to Holland and Netherlands, and to Britain too. In 1921, a Hasidic dynasty was founded in Falticeni by Rabbi Elazar Tversky, and he's a sign of the Skver Hasidic sect. As of course they multiplied the children, they all started their own groups. And there is even, I went to a cemetery in New Jersey with my cousin to visit my aunt, and I go in the cemetery in New Jersey and I see a Falticeni section, and I found out that in Brooklyn there's a Falticeni section which are descendants from Rabbi Tversky. And what we know in Montreal is Solomon Zalman Schechter, architect of American conservative Judaism. He studied in the town. In 1822, the town was given a land act to build a synagogue, a grand synagogue, and this is the original land act, as you see over here, given to me by Robert Steinmetz, the present president of the community in Falticeni. And this is the synagogue of Falticeni, the grand synagogue. There were many of them, and usually organized by guilds. Woodworkers would have a guild, tailors would have a synagogue, and they had their own synagogues. It was very well decorated. That's myself here, 1973 photo when I visited with my father. My father took the picture. That's a more recent picture, and it's a beautiful synagogue, and it's amazing how people with so few means built a town and a synagogue and hospitals and Talmud Torahs. Just amazing how those people succeeded. Where did Romanians come from? Well, Romanian Jews came from the north, from this area over here. They came in south. Why? Because the landowners, Romanian landowners, saw that they were missing something. They were missing trade in the area. They had agriculture, but agriculture without trade is not enough. So if they can trade, they can expand, make the places richer, they make themselves richer. And for this, on the other hand, it was a kind of a push-pull situation where the Russians caused pogroms in the north, Russian Empire in the north, and the Jews trying to flee from there, from the pale of settlement. And on the other hand, Romanian aristocrats, landowners saying, I need you guys to help me build trade over here. I'll give you free land. Just do something, build a town, build trade, bring your professions with you, and so on. And you'll see that in Romania on the left-hand side, you have over here, there were Romanians, Hungarians, Germans, Ukrainians, Russians, Bulgarians, Jews, Turks, Tatars, Poles, Gagauz. Gagauz are Turks. They're mainly over here, the Gagauz. Turks in Bessarabia who are Christians, and Gypsies and others. And you see here the percentage of Jews are the yellows, and you see there are more yellows over here and less yellows over here. Bucharest, you have a big yellow here, but the Jews from Bucharest, they actually came from the north. So this is mostly where the Jews settled, where you see the strong yellows. And here's another portrayal of the same thing. The census of Jews in Romania. You'll find out that the dark blues is where the high density, the dark areas, the dark blues, high density of Jews in Romania. And surprisingly, I didn't know that our town, because our family was not really religious. I'm surprised at the dynasties that came out from Romania, the religious dynasties. You have the Satmar from Satu Mare, the Klausenberg from Cluj-Napoca, from the Transylvania, and Timișoara, which is in the southwest. And you have Bucharest, and basically all the Bohuș, Botoșani, really a whole bunch of dynasties over here. And when you consider there were 757,000 Jews there, a good part of them were religious, which led the Romanian Jewry. Some history over here. In the 1500, you had Greater Moldova, founded by a king called Stefan the Great, Stefan cel Mare. And you see here the Hungary, Transylvania in orange, Poland in the north, Russia in the east over here. Wallachia is Romanian too. So you had two areas of Romania, Moldavia and Wallachia, two separate regions. They were not kingdoms. This was a kingdom, and they were kind of sort of kingdoms at the time, or princedoms. And then as it progressed, Poland, Lithuania expanded over here, and there were wars, and the Ottoman Empire expanded along the shores of the Black Sea, and you see the Russian Empire expanded with Catherine the Great, and Moldova gets squeezed over here as they take over this Bessarabia. And then further on, the 1870, the Russian Empire and Austro-Hungarian expands here into Poland, and Ottoman Empire is being squeezed in the south. And further, in 1913, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, First World War, is taken apart. New countries are formed, Hungary and Poland and so on. And Romania takes part of, as part of the settlement after the war, Transylvania over here, and Bessarabia over here, which was previously Russian over here. So Romania becomes the big picture I showed you earlier on. But in 1940, I'll go to the next map over here, Germany attacks Poland in September 39. But just earlier on, in October 23, 39, Molotov and Ribbentrop, Russian and the foreign ministers of Germany and the Soviets, they make a pact dividing Poland and other territories among themselves, and they negotiate that, by the way, Hungary becomes an ally of Germany, and they negotiate that they give this region back to Hungary, and this region they give to Russia as part of this pact, and this region too. So, and then Romania is a kingdom under King Carol II, and they originate from the Austrian royal family and with ties to Queen Victoria and the British royal family. But that's another story, too long over here to say. In 1940, November 1940, a military fascist coup under Marshal Ioan Antonescu, Romanian, takes power and officially joins the Axis powers, and which are Germany and Italy. In 22nd of June 1941, Operation Barbarossa, the Germans launch an attack against the Soviet Union that 2 years earlier they just made a deal of peace and splitting Poland and Europe between themselves. In 1941, 29th of June, just a week later after the 22nd of June the operation started, Romanian army and gendarmes start rounding up Jews and start committing a pogrom and so on. By the end of 41, all remaining Jews in Bessarabia and Bukovina were expelled to ghettos or murdered. Actually, there was a pogrom in Dorohoi in 1940, even before the war started for Romania. 1939 in Poland, but not in Romania. In 1941, there was a group of anti-Semites, nationalists, called the Iron Guard or Legionnaires. And they attacked the Jews in Bucharest first with a pogrom, and they rebelled because of the division of Romania to Hungary and to Russia. They thought it's not correct for Romania to lose those territories that they gained in 1914. So who did they jump on? Of course, they attacked the Jews. They didn't attack Hungarians, they didn't attack the Russians. And they caused a rebellion in Bucharest. They rounded the Jews and they slaughtered them in Bucharest in a kosher slaughterhouse, the way Jews slaughter cattle. They did terrible things over there, and 125 people were killed and tortured, unbelievable. And that's and burned down the Sephardic synagogue in Bucharest. This is the Operation Barbarossa, and you find here that Slovakia was a German ally, Hungary was a German ally. This is Romania over here, this area. This is another governorship here. Germany went all the way to Estonia, just before Leningrad, reached almost Moscow, went over here in this pocket over here, and then all the way to Stalingrad over here. And the Romanian army and the Italians and some Ukrainian units joined here and committed pogroms along this corridor over here all the way to Odessa, and I'll show you later an area called Transnistria. And there was a corridor of people that were walking all the way here called the Death Road, where people were walking towards this area here, and they were shot along the road as they were walking. Every 15 kilometers there were graves and they were shot. These are the things I found out during and after my visit in the area. In Iași was the first big pogrom, that is after the Bucharest and the Dorohoi pogrom. On the 29th of June, I mentioned, just a week after the Operation Barbarossa, Jews were rounded up in the town. Iași is the capital of Moldova, Romanian Moldova. 8,000 were killed in the initial pogrom in Iași. Then they put Jews in two trains, one going to Călărași and one to Podul Iuai. I'm pronouncing them Romanian way. The Jews were stuffed in a train in summer, 29th of June, 100 per wagon, and they suffocated, and they just went back and forth to kill as many possible to save bullets, and few survived. In those few days, 15,000 Jews were killed. So I have to plan my trip, and I decide I'm going to start from Odessa going this way, and over here I'll figure out what I'm going to do in Chisinau. This I have not planned yet. Here, this I know I planned, but this thing I have not planned yet. This is going up in Moldova or former Bessarabia. First I went to Israel, and I stopped by to see my parents' tombs, a cemetery in Hulon, and my aunt and uncle. And just beside their tombstones over here in Hulon, there is, what do I find? The memorial to Yash Poduluai Kalarash, exactly what I was talking about, the memorial to those people killed in the first pogrom. They're just across the tombs from my parents. I didn't notice them before, but now preparing for this trip, I suddenly noticed that, and it touched me, and of course took pictures of that. And there's a whole uh, uh, can't call it a boulevard. There's an allée in French, allée, a path over there of monuments to pogroms that happened in Europe, and it's fascinating to see all those Jewish communities that were destroyed, eliminated, disappeared during the Second World War. And going in the habit of tombstones in Israel is you put the origin of the people, where they come from. Over here it might have, it doesn't say so here, but on the back of the monument you have that they're coming from Falticeni or from Bucharest or from Budapest or whatever. It's fascinating to see where those people all came. Me'ain bata, as Rabbi Pinto called it. And it's written on the stone. It's not enough to say he died here on this date so and so, but look from where he came. Look where their history comes from. When I come to Odessa, Ukraine, I didn't know what to expect. First I had to learn some Russian Cyrillic characters to be able to read the street names, and I did that. It's a beautiful, beautiful old city, imperial in style, built after Catherine the Great. You find here the opera house, which is the same like in Zagreb. 6 opera houses like that were built. Very beautiful pavilions and shopping centers. That's the downtown area. It's famous for a film. I'll get to that later. In the 19th century, it was the 4th largest in Imperial Russia and industrial commerce of the south. It's a famous port. And Odessa had the 2nd largest Jewish population in Europe after Warsaw, 3rd in the world after New York. So New York, Warsaw, and Odessa. Believe it or not, you have McDonald's over here, people sitting outside. I'm visiting in March, so it's pretty cool. You see people wearing coats. You still have Christmas decorations on in the street at night. Some people remember the famous movie Potemkin by Sergei Eisenstein about the Navy mutiny aboard the Potemkin ship, and that happened before the First World War. And I walk around Odessa with my camera and I take pictures, and I see on my map, I see the synagogues, and their synagogues. I see the neighborhoods. I see former synagogues that are not synagogues anymore. This is the only synagogue left in Odessa, this over here. And you see the architecture of the Jewish quarter, homes and so on. I passed by Shalom Aleicham's house, and you see here presence in Odessa since 1789, about the time of the American Revolution, and they participated already in the city administration. And by 1939, the Jews are the majority population in Odessa, more than Russians, more than Ukrainians, Poles, Germans, Bulgarians, Moldovans, and Armenians. But then, after the Second World War, the Ukrainians, they were taken over, they were given to Ukraine. It goes up, and you see here that the Jewish population goes down to a few thousand today. The Jews in Odessa were entered business, whatever they saw was going on. And Ukraine is a big grain country, like our Saskatchewan, and they entered this grain company, which was occupied by Greeks and I believe Italians. They were in that business, and they muscled on into that business over there, which didn't help them being liked in the community, overall bigger community. They got into 70% of the bank's administration, retail, craftsmen, tailors, printers, timber, manufacturing, medical. 70% of medical services was Jewish. Law, technical engineers, architects, chemists, schools, hospitals. They were big. But Odessa, for us Jews, Israelis, was also a major Zionist center that helped build Israel. It was a political Zionist and intellectual center, while Warsaw and in Lithuania, Vilnius, they were more religious centers, but the traditional Jewish centers, while Odessa was more revolutionary, reformist minded, and so on. And you have people like Lillenblum, Ahad Ha'am, Levinsky, Dizengoff, Usishkin, Mendele Mocher Sfarim, Joseph Klausner, who founded the Encyclopedia Hebraica, Shalom Aleichem, Nachman Bialik, all coming from Odessa. May have not all been born there, but they all built this incubator of Zionism in Odessa. The Odessa pogroms were the first actually that we have recorded in the Russian period, 1821, as I mentioned, by Greek merchants. But in 1941, 120 years later, surprisingly, 30,000 Jews were shot or burned in Odessa by Germans and Romanians. Then it swelled to 100,000 Ukrainian Jews in the surrounding area around Odessa. And you'll notice the Transnistria area around Odessa and Bessarabia over here. There is a Dniester river here, and Transnistria means over the Dniester river, across the Dniester. So this is across the Dniester river. It was perpetrated mostly by Romanian army, German Einsatzgruppen, and local ethnic Germans. I was searching for a Jewish museum in Odessa, and I followed the map and my GPS and my Waze and so on, Google, and I find this entrance over here. It's supposed to be somewhere here, but I don't see any museum. I enter here and I find a little doorway here in the back. I'm pointing in the left-hand corner below, and that must be the museum. It's a few rooms. It's like an apartment. It's not a big museum like we can expect. A small apartment with all kind of pictures and paraphernalia from Jewish life that used to be that great story of Odessa Jewry that was decimated. Here is Transnistria. Present-day Republic of Moldova occupies the previous area of Bessarabia. And in 1990, when the Soviet Union fell, Moldova, which was the Soviet Socialist Republic Moldova, was a war started between, a civil war started between the Romanian-speaking and the Russian-speaking. So you see here, the red area is the Pridniestrian, what happened to my mouse? Here it is. The Pridniestrian region, which was Russian-speaking. They wanted Moldova to be Russian. Romanians wanted Moldova to become Romanian. Notice the flags, how similar they are of Romania and Moldova. And here you have in the south the Turks. They became autonomous. Over here it is the Russian-speaking or Ukrainian-speaking Pridniestran or Transnistria. And overall, in this area, if I'm going back to the pictures here, there were 300,000 Jews murdered in this area over here, 600,000 with others, non-Jews, gypsies, and all kind of undesirables to the Germans and to the Romanians, be they priests or be they communists or whatever. So I'm in Odessa here, and I have to get into Moldova. I have to go through Transnistria. I had no idea what to expect, and it's a long story. There's no buses. There are no trains from Odessa to go to Chisinau. I'm trying to get here, and there's nothing going on between those two areas. And the only way I can get is with a taxi. I negotiate finally a taxi to get across, and I get a Ukrainian driver. And when we get to the Transnistria border, and that is during the time when the Ukrainians were fighting the Russians in Ukraine. So there's tension between Russians, and who is in Transnistria? The Russian army is helping guide Transnistria, protect Transnistria from the Romanians in Republic of Moldova after the Civil War. There was a Russian army stationed here. So I crossed from Odessa here with this taxi. Ukrainian driver tells me, give me your passport, don't say a word, shut up. I'll talk to the guy and see how we get by. And I do succeed in crossing the border there. They're all grim-faced guys like I saw in East Germany when I lived in Germany. And I get into Transnistria and pass through Tiraspol, the capital of Transnistria. And then when I get to the border with Moldova, they have a little trailer there, and in the trailer they have a Moldovan border guard sitting in the trailer, and I present my passport, and they speak Romanian among themselves. I said, thank goodness, at least I can understand these guys now, and I speak Romanian to them, and I'm proud about my Romanian that I did not forget. We spoke at home Romanian in Israel, and they recognize me that I come from the Suceava region. Imagine, I left their area 60-something years ago, and they still think I have an accent from that area. So it's pretty good that my parents and I we all spoke Romanian at home. And from there on, I pass through Bender, and we go to Chisinau or Kishinev. And Kishinev is surprisingly modern. I heard Moldova is very poor. It's surprisingly modern. They got shopping centers and cars from all the brand names in Europe. And I go to my hotel, and lo and behold, my hotel happens to be across the Jewish center of Chisinau. Across. I mean, you just step out of the hotel, you go into across the street, and you go into the Kishinev Jacob's Jewish campus. It's a big building, like we have in Montreal, the Cummings, Montreal, and they have posters outside of different religious holidays, events, and so on. And donations have come from Canada, from Toronto, from San Diego, and from Pittsburgh. Thank you to those people that donated to build this center over here. And this little lady here, she is Dr. Irina Shihova, who runs the local museum in the basement over here. And here she is in the basement. She is the curator, and this is the Chisinau Museum of Moldova, present-day Moldova, and she presents me the various artifacts and people, pictures from the area. And I asked her to help me find the camps that I think are in Moldova where my father served. So she presents me to another person later on, but some statistics. In Kishinev, there were 53,000 of 65,000 Jewish inhabitants were murdered. By October 41, all Bessarabian Jewry was practically annihilated. Who didn't run away was gone or was exported to ghettos somewhere else, but mostly annihilated over here, because they were caught kind of between Russians and Germans. The Romanians want to get back the things that the Russians had. The Russians wanted to keep it. They fought about it, and the Jews were squeezed in both cases. In Edinets, for example, which I went up there, a population of 50 Jews before the war, deported 5,700. In 2004 census, 14. Today there are only 7 left out of a population of 15,000. Amazing, amazing how complete settlements disappeared, Jewish life, centuries old, and so on. So I meet in Chisinau Dr. Irina Shihova, who introduces me to local Shoah researcher Yuri Zagorcha, who is not Jewish, he's Christian, he's retired, he's a professor from a high school, and he heard things going on in his area in the north of Moldova, and he decided to do something about it. We're driving north to Belts and to Edinets, looking for Alexandreni, a camp that my father mentioned. This is the route we're taking over here, Belts and to Edinets, up over here. Here is the border with Ukraine. is surrounding this area, and Romania is over here, and my town, Falticeni, is over here, Suceava is over here. So you gotta go here this way. And by the way, I rented a car to do it, and rented cars don't cross borders. You go to Romania, you have to rent another car. If you want to go to Ukraine, you have to rent another car. So it doesn't work with insurance and so on. So we drive up north, and passing by from Tiraspol through Calfa, I found the place of Calfa. Said this could be another camp where my father was. I'll remember it, and I'll go back to it later when I come back. So we go up to Edinets, and we see homes looking like Jewish homes. One home was converted into a school, which is good, at least to preserve it. I go to the Edinet cemetery, and that really shocked me. Very big cemetery. It's a testimonial to the rich Jewish life that were there, but the stones were all overturned, unkept. Some of the small homes are stones are for children that died, disorganized. I was told later it's possible that it's also the ground below is unstable and the stones were falling over because of that. But of course there was vandalism, I'm sure, included in that. But it's totally damaged. You can't even read the names on the stones. Very difficult. But in Edinets, it was recognized as an important Jewish community, and with Israel, they made a park over here in the center of town, a park with a memorial to the pogrom, to the murder in 1941, to the Shoah, more than a pogrom. And this is Yuri Zagorcha, who was my guide in the area, and he created memorials along the area, and created this memorial with other donations from children of the Holocaust who donated to create these memorials in various towns where Holocaust occurred. Here's Yuri Zagorcha, Dr. Irina Shihova, and Irina Belfer from the Jewish community. It was raining, it was pouring, it's a miserable day. Now, notice it says here, Strada Holocaust for the victims of genocide 1941. This is rare that he got this symbol over here approved, because normally Romanians or Eastern Europe, they don't call it genocide or Holocaust. They prefer to call it the fascists did that. It's the fascists who killed them. It's not us. It's the fascists. No, here it says clearly it's a Holocaust for a genocide. And Yuri Zagorcha, I admire him greatly. I call him a champion. He gives education to schools. These are all non-Jewish residents, children. He still teaches about the Holocaust in the schools there. He brings up stories about the Holocaust, and you find here in the history class portraits of Stefan the Great, the kings, emperors, and so on of the area. And you see the dedications of those memorials. You find even Moldovan army and priests at those same memorials for Jews, beside the cross, beside them. And there were Orthodox priests that were killed also for helping Jews. And here's a teacher with a class with flowers, bringing flowers to the memorials. And Yuri here and other members of the Jewish community that supported the building of memorial. And I support him in building other memorials in other areas. My present project is to support building the Death March road that went from Galicia, Poland to Transnistria. There's going to be a monument there, and I'm trying to help him build a monument there. So we finally reach Alexandrene, where my father supposedly was in the camp over there. I don't see much over there. I see a church, a graveyard, and further away there was a stone quarry, because what they did is they carried stones and broke them into small gravel to put on the roads, which the roads are very muddy. The earth is very fertile here, very good for agriculture. And then I come back from there, and I double back through Chisinau to go to the other side of Moldova, to Calfa, and try to figure out this Calfa. Could my father have been here? I come here to Calfa, I drive along this muddy road here, not even paved, and I am introduced by a lady I met in the town. Don't want to say where I met her. I met her, and she brought me to visit this gentleman who is the oldest living member from the Second World War. This gentleman describes a story from the war. He doesn't remember seeing anything in Kalfa because he was recruited to the Romanian army and he was sent somewhere else, but he remembers hearing Jews being shot in the neighboring town of Bender on the border with the Dniester River on the border of Transnistria. So he remembers the Jews being shot there, and then my guide shows me their stone quarries in Kalfa. Maybe that was where my father was, maybe. So it's all maybe because I have no proof it could be that. And we drive around, and I had a picture of my father that he had in his pocket. You see it's all crumpled here, this picture on the left. It was taken during the war, and you see them putting gravel stones. These are Jews from the camp. My father is the one standing over here. He's the supervisor, what you might call it, of this work camp, and he was there from 41 to 44. And I talked to her, and as I'm driving her back, she tells me stop the car, and I.
Știți care este? Asta este strada centrală a satului Calfa, fiindcă ca să meargă la strada care au construit-o, trebuie întâi să facă strada centrală, apoi să ajungă la șosea.
Da. So basically, she says, this is the main central street of Kalfa, and the picture you have with your father is basically this street you're standing on right now. And what they were doing is they were paving the street with gravel for the muddy conditions of the area at the time. And they were working in the quarries over here. There were 7 stone quarries. They were working, breaking up the stones and putting them on roads. And later I found out that he was in a work battalion of a Romanian army. I thought originally he was in a concentration camp run by Germans, but he wasn't. It was Romanians running it. And they were basically doing work on roads. In Hebrew you call it ma'at, avodot tziburiot, infrastructure work, because all the men, Romanian non-Jews, were taken to the war effort, and the Jews were used as slave labor. So they were digging ditches, doing roads, and so on and so on. And Beno Zalmanovic from New York later told me that 1,000 men from Falticeni were taken into this area over here, and of 1,000 men, 999 came back from the war, and the single one who died was a guy who had a work accident in the quarry. Stones fell upon the guy. So that's a story I finally got confirmed about how my father got alive from the war. And here's a telegram I received from my cousin, who was, I'll tell you the story. My aunt first, she was from Falticeni, my father's sister. She went to Vienna to study. In Vienna she meets her husband. They have a daughter. The Germans move into anti-Semitism starts in Austria with Hitler coming to power in 1933. They get out of there to go to Paris, where she has a brother, my uncle. Germans are advancing on Paris. They run away to Marseille. Marseille, they get the boat. They cross to Tangier, Morocco. From there, they got the boat to Havana because Canada and the US would not let any Jews from Europe come there. And in this letter, in this telegram written by the Red Cross, Romanian Red Cross sent, it says my father's name, the street, Falticeni, and they're writing in German because in northern Romania, Bukovina, they spoke Yiddish, German, Romanian, and even some French. It says, Schreiben erhalten, Mutter und Familien gesund. We've received your letter, imagine from the camp. Von Isaac, that's my uncle in Paris. Good news, gute Nachrichten. geht euch? How are you guys doing? And Noemi. Noemi is a daughter. Schreibt oft. Please write more often. Kisses. This is being sent in 29th of July 1943, my father's birthday. Can you imagine? Sent to the Romanian Red Cross. He's in a work camp or concentration camp, working the roads, and he's sent to the Romanian Red Cross to Havana, Cuba, and it's crossed out at the bottom over here. It's crossed out and it says sent forward to Mexico, District Federal. It's gone to Mexico City because from Havana they moved to Mexico City. Amazing telegram that my cousin forwarded to me, sent from the middle of the war. And over here you find I'm meeting the Chisinau community. It's Purim. They're having a big party in the community. I'm in the center over here, surrounded by this community. I told them I'm from Montreal, from a Jewish community too on the South Shore. They're many times bigger than our Jewish community in the South Shore, I can tell you that. And they have a party, and do they know how to party? There are about 4,000 people over there, and I was surprised they spoke more Russian than Romanian, even though they're in the Romanian part of Moldova, and they were all really, really fun people. And they made over here a show. You see here they got some Caribbean tempo going on over there, and that's the Romanian section. That's Romanian. Well, you can't imagine how I felt, how good I felt to see this event, this Purim party, after the horrible days at the cemetery in Edinets and the road up north in the rain and the misery of the Holocaust testimonials I heard that I won't even share with you over here, both for time and both for how gruesome it was, what happened during the war. So from Chisinau here, I get a taxi, I go to Iași, and I arrive in Iași, which is basically the capital of Romanian Moldova, former capital. It's a university town today. It's a cultural museum, looks like a palace over here. Capital of the former Principality of Moldova. And in 1860 something, 1858, 65, Moldova and Wallachia merged and they elected a king. So then Romania was actually formed at that time, in 1865 approximately. And this is a memorial to the Holocaust in Iași. Municipality of Iași. Jewish economy in Iași was cereals, livestock, wool, honey, cheese, exclusively handled by Jews. Again, the Greeks were there involved, and they took place of the Greeks as bankers and money changers. There were also Armenians in the time that expanded through the Ottoman Empire in the area. The Jews were goldsmiths, tailors, hatters, furriers, and shoemakers. They had their own guilds, their own synagogues. They formed 43% of the population, and they had the first professional Yiddish theater group in all of Europe. Was founded in Romania, in Iași, in 1876. And then I'm driving towards Falticeni through Moldova, and I see churches. There's a big resurgence of religion in Europe, and in some place I read that it's the most religious state in Europe. I don't know what happened, but something after the communists, which was total atheists, they said suddenly became religious. But it's not only Russian, Romanian Orthodox. It's Latter-day Saints. It's all kind of other evangelical religious movements moved into the area. But these are all Orthodox churches here. I entered Falticeni. Last time I entered was with my father in 1973 over here. You still have carts drawn by horses. But the municipality of Falticeni is a very modern, not modern, classical French architecture, a lot of French influence in Romania. It's very French oriented. They even have an Arc de Triomphe in Bucharest. It's a present population of 25,000. There's no large industry now. It was known for the high number of Romanian artists, writers, scientists who were born, lived, studied there, and of course for the religious entity, Jewish religious entity, which today there's nothing left except the Grand Synagogue. The Falticeni, they expanded churches over here. There's a monument to the First World War, and the street over here, there's casino and stores and big signs, not what I expected at all. I visited the synagogues. This is in 73. I didn't visit them this time. I'm here with my father here in this synagogue. This is the Grand Synagogue over here, fenced off away. But now it's converted to a sort of museum, working hand in hand with the Romanian Orthodox Church. They had an event over there. I was amazed. They had a cultural event. The symphony orchestra from Iași came. There was an art exhibition. So they're doing at least something with the beautiful synagogue that I showed you earlier on. Our homes, where did we live in Falticeni? This is my grandfather's estate. My father showed me that. I don't know if it's there today. I didn't stop by there. It's around 1920. My parents' home was over here, and now that's how it looks today. It was divided into two families living there. This is my uncle's Max's house in 73. This is how it looks today. It's beside a store here that was built next door. It's still there, still kept. You see different architectures here. This is the brasserie or the tavern where my mother's maternal family, grandmother, in 1973. The street is demolished. You have a big condo built around it and a computer store. So there's nothing left of this street. It's gone. This is the former Jewish hospital, and it's still the hospital in the town. They kept it. No more Jews there, but they kept the hospital, and it's there. And this is the former Jewish pharmacy, which is still a pharmacy today, but bigger and more luxurious. And my guide in Falticeni was this Professor Virgiliu Lupu. He invited me for supper and homemade wine, because this whole area is vineyards, Moldova and northern, both Romanian side and Bessarabian or the Republic of Moldova side. They a lot of vineyards, and I'm invited to his house. He's with his wife and Juliana, and he presents me a bunch of papers, as you see at the edge of the table over here. And I look at the papers over there, and in those papers there's an article about my father in the 1942-43 period in the forced labor camps in Bessarabia. And this is a gentleman, Joseph Bacalu, who wrote, he wrote in Romanian, that my father saved him from death, and probably his family also from being sent to Transnistria, because he was 17 years old at the time. He wasn't behaving very well for an inmate, and the Romanian captain started beating him up, and my father intervened and stopped him from being beaten up. And here's exactly what I was looking for: the fact that they worked in a battalion number 6 for roads, with a head office in Caușani in Moldova. He was also, this is Joseph Bolner who saved him, and they were also in 4 different locations: Caușani, Calfa, Alexandren, Manzar. So finally I have proof that my father was there. Not only he was there, he saved this guy, and he lived in Natseret Elit in Israel. And I found another article that my aunt clipped in Israel, that he wrote in an ad in a Romanian newspaper in Israel. I'm looking for Joseph Bolner. I'm old. I don't know how long I have. I would like to thank him for having saved my life during the war. I go visit the cemetery in Falticeni. That's where the family is. That's all I've got left in Romania. And as you enter the cemetery, there are two things on the left-hand side. You have the memorial to the sages, the great rabbis of Falticeni. You stop by there, you light a candle, and you have here memorial to the Jews who fought and died in the First World War against the Russians in the First World War. And this is the cemetery fence. It looked good, nothing compared to what we saw in Edinets. You see here it's white, it's painted, a nice fence with a Magen David, and there's a caretaker there, and the monuments are kind of so-so. They're still there, the writing is still there. This is faded. I'm going to repaint them again, put back the writing on those things. My paternal grandfather, Israel Bolner. My paternal grandmother is here. My maternal grandfather, my maternal grandmother. I have to repaint them or refix them this spring. There are stately homes in Falticeni, institutions today, museums. There are new developments. They've got this communist-style era buildings where they packed people in, but you see professionals are building little small homes, villas, and a brand new neighborhood over here. There's a market, an indoor market to Falticeni. Here you see a house, an elder gentleman fixing up his vines in his backyard. As I mentioned, it's wine country. Everybody does their own wine. I'm exaggerating, but most people do. And market, and the streets, a boulevard. And you find here, then I move on to Suceava. And in Suceava, I stop by the only synagogue left, the Gar synagogue, Gomlei Chassidim, Gomlei Chassidim, Gar synagogue in Suceava. Suceava was the capital of Bukovina, and now Falticeni is in the county of Suceava. The center of the county is Suceava. This is the county administrative center, and the St. Dumitru Church in the center of Suceava. And I go there because I try to get archives, documents about my parents' birth certificates, my grandparents' birth certificates, and the city said, if they're older than 100 years old, you've got to go to Suceava. That's the National Archive Center. This is the National Archive Center. So I got there on a Friday. Don't ask how they opened for me because they closed on Friday. I told them to come all the way from Montreal, please, please, please. And they let me in. And I pulled the earliest documents from Falticeni, birth records from Falticeni, from 1864 to 1869. And I stood there for 1.5 days, standing, taking pictures page by page of these books over here. And I found my birth certificate of my maternal grandfather, Herschku Hermann. My name comes from Herschku. Hirsch in German means deer, Zvi in Hebrew. So Hirsch, Herschku Romanianized, Harry, that's me. So I got the records over here, and on this record, which is written in beautiful Romanian, it's written also that he married my grandmother on this date, and they died on so and so that date. And here you see all those registers that I took pictures on, page by page. I had to put a stone on the corner or a pipe fitting on the other to keep the pages from rolling up. And I stood with my camera for 2,000 pictures that I took, and I donated them to the Jewish Genealogical Society Romanian section. Then I went to visit Rădăuți, which surprised me. It's also in Bukovina. Merle's ancestry from Montreal, she's from Rădăuți. She told me about it. It also had a strong Hasidic influence. And this is the Grand Synagogue in Rădăuți. Surprised me, a really big synagogue. It's supported by Israel. There was a plaque at the entrance over there. And it's in the main, can you imagine the main city park. One side is anchored by the Jewish synagogue, the other side by the Catholic Church. Why? Because Rădăuți is in Bukovina. Bukovina was in Austrian-Hungarian Empire. They were Catholics. So they had more Catholicism here than they had Romanian Orthodox. So you see more Catholic churches in Rădăuți, and the big Catholic church, of course, in Suceava. There are 6,000 Jews that came back after the war, and now they dwindled, and now there are less Jews left in Radovich. I don't know how many are left today. Then I went to visit Dorohoi, the place of the first pogrom in 1940, also a Hasidic center. There were 6,800 Jews in 1899, majority of the population. Today, I don't know if anybody's left there. You find here the municipality and a beautiful Orthodox church. Then I went to Botoshan, which is a capital of a county called Botoshan. It's originating in the 17th century, an important merchant town. Again, the prince gave the property to the Jews about the same time that Falticeni was founded. Hillel Kahana, writer and educator, founded a secular school here. 75% of merchants, 68% of artisans were Jews. This was, you might say, mainly a Jewish business center, the downtown, the center of the town, around this statue over here. Again, major 11,840 Jews, and now, who knows, certainly less than 100. And you find beautiful Jewish stores and homes around here. And one home has become, this was a bank by a Jewish banker, the Moscovich home you find here, this in Romanian, Casa Moscovich, the Moscovich house. Romanian is like Spanish or Italian, and today it's a rotary, it's a historic monument. They kept the Jewish history of Botoshan with plaques all over the place, so they did a good job. And another big surprise, I found out Botoshan is a sister city or brother city to Laval, Canada. Believe it or not. Botoshan, I go all the way from Canada, drive through Odessa, arrive to northeastern Romania, and there I find Laval, Canada on a sign. You find Botoshan is a modern city, but it also says, watch out, you have still horses and carts on the street. So it's still got something of the past. And then I saw it all. I had it. I returned my rent-a-car. I fly to Bucharest. I go to the big city. This is the former crazy big palace of Ceausescu over here that he built in Bucharest, bankrupted the country with it. This is the faculty, the Academy of Music, beautiful buildings over here. This is the military academy center here. You have the Arc de Triomphe in Bucharest, and my summary of it all, and it's 22:12. It is a bittersweet trip. It was sad. It was happy to see the communities of Chisinau so alive and so present. I learned a lot about the region's history of the Holocaust by bullets. I found the place where my father was during the war. I found some documents, my maternal grandparents, none from my paternal grandparents. I couldn't find any. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. And then I did the DNA test coming home. Surprise, surprise. I'm 99% Ashkenazi. Well, I knew that. I'm Eastern European. I knew that. But they told me I'm a Kohen. I didn't know that. My father never told me that. And my modal haplotype, lineage, is presumed is the same as the Prophet Muhammad. So, you see, I have an important connection over there. And in the different people, second, third, fourth cousins I have scattered around the world. I've got people in Morocco, United Arab Emirates, and if more of them would do DNA testing, I'd find more people. So I was born, this is Sandra for you, I was born on the western side of the Zagros Mountains of Iran, 25,000 years ago. Not I was born, my ancestors came there, and I'm jokingly say I moved to Israel with Abraham from Mesopotamia, or at least with the Babylonians when they came. Thank you.
Simply fascinating, right, Gladys?
It was a great, great, great presentation. Everybody was looking forward. You go beyond expectations, as high as our expectations, you always go beyond. Thank you so much. It was a great, great presentation that all learned and enjoyed, and you brought us all together. Everybody wants to listen to you. Thank you so much. Is anybody would like to ask anything?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
There was recently a gentleman from I think Technion University, and he works in New Jersey, and he is involved in a big project called Avotenu, and they try to they gather samples of DNA from the population, from the men, because the chromosome, the DNA goes through the male side, and they are able to trace Jewish migration through this DNA. And I wanted to introduce it to our synagogue because he said that our synagogue, since it's an amalgamation of so many different origins from the Middle East, and it's a perfect place to make a gene pool sample, that he would give these test kits to everybody, and they mail it to him. It's totally anonymous. And once he gathers all the data from our group, he would make a presentation about it. So your presentation here is very valuable for me to present the whole prospect or the idea to the rabbi, and to see if others are interested. You know, Eli Hadid and some other people got some samples from me from the kit, but so far nothing has taken off the ground. And I'm hoping that your beautiful presentation recorded can help us launch this, because it's totally fascinating to me.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to say anything?
I want to ask Harry how long it took him to put all this together once he came back to Montreal.
Weeks.
Only weeks. I
not
thought
months.
or yeah.
Not more than 2 months, but I'd say weeks.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Harry.
Yes, Lizette. Yes, Lizette.
Harry, who did you do the DNA with? There's so many. There's 24andMe. There's which one did you do it with?
I joined the Jewish Genealogical Society in Montreal, and I asked them the same question exactly. I didn't know where to start, because I saw Ancestry.com and I saw 23andMe and so on, and they told me that the family tree DNA, FTDNA, has got a bigger Jewish sampling, and because of that, because it's still its infancy, the DNA, even though millions took it, but we're billions in the world. Yeah, and it's so family tree, FTDNA. I did the DNA with them, and I got my relationship story. But you will find another one if you do with Ancestry. They also have, of course, a large Jewish population, and there's also Heritage, which is MyHeritage, is an Israeli heritage genealogy company that started up, and they got billions of records. So you can start with one of them or the other, and then you might say, but what happens if my cousin did with Ancestry and I did with FTDNA? We're not going to find each other, right? Because it's confidential. Every one of those DNA is confidential. So some people, I didn't do that, some people do the test with 2-3 different organizations to make sure they maximize the hits they get around. I didn't do so far, but there's another third method of doing that, and that is there's a third-party DNA group where you can send your DNA in there. It's not as confidential as before, okay? But then other people which send their stuff in there, you can match up with other people there. So FTDNA, 23andMe, Ancestry, MyHeritage, if everyone did their own thing, you will not see them. But if they put it into the common pool, they will be able to talk to each other and see who's who, and you'll be able to get more matches.
I was told by Alan Farhi, who has done the family tree of probably most Middle Eastern Jews. He started in Damascus, in Lebanon, in Iraq. We can find ourselves in it. And he recommended family tree, as you mentioned, and I took my DNA with family tree. And he said the Avotenu, Sandra, that you're talking about, connects with the family tree, by the way. They're the ones they work with. That's why I took it with family tree. But nobody found Muhammad as related to me. Thank you.
When you asked the young people in Romania, did you know that Jews existed during the war or before the war? What did they answer you?
Well, I didn't talk to many young Jews. By the way, I did it myself with the
Not Jews, non-Jews.
Non-Jews. Yeah, I didn't. I talked to people who were more like in their 30s, 40s, not young people, not high school kids or something. And I spoke to them in Falticeni mainly because I was alone in the car driving most of the time. And the whole tour I was talking about took 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks from Odessa all the way to Bucharest. So I was really going at a fast pace, staying 2-3 days in one place. And I told them I'm Jewish, I came here, I was born here. And then the waitress, she said, oh yeah, it was a Jewish town. That she remembered. But now with this new event that the municipality, the Romanian Orthodox Church and the Jewish synagogue in the Grand Synagogue in Falticeni did, they publicized the Jewish fact of northern Romania. So I think it's going to be more and more because Romania did not recognize its part in the Holocaust. They had a major part in the Holocaust. Those 300,000 Jews that were not killed by Germans, they were killed mostly by Romanian army and gendarme and civilians. So finally, now we have a Romanian ambassador to Israel who wrote the book on the Holocaust. So you can imagine that it's recognized right there. The president of Romania, he's of German origin, the president of Romania, and he recognizes this fact. And with the Americans, USH, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, they are building or built a museum, a Holocaust museum in Bucharest to highlight the Holocaust. We have a fantastic Holocaust museum in Poland, in Warsaw, that was built recently. The Poles have a problem with that, the present government. But in Romania, they're building one. Eventually, the message is going to be out. And don't forget, you probably know, Romania has sent many workers to Israel, to work in Israel. My family, when they needed help for older cousins, help in the house and so on, they chose Romanian women from Moldova, because they spoke Romanian in Israel. Like other non-Romanians would get Philippine helpers in the house. So we had Romanian, Moldovan women, they go back and they remember. It's strange to see that the children of those that persecuted our parents and grandparents are now working in Israel with Romanians, the descendants of those. It's an amazing thing. And I can tell you something, it impoverished the country. The persecution of Jews and having expelled the Jews indirectly, they killed them, they not expelled them, in that manner impoverished the area. There's no industry, there's nothing. It's not for nothing they're poor today, my opinion, personal
You
opinion.
are right, you are right. Whenever the Jews leave, the country becomes awful, yes.
How did you find today's Romanians' views towards the Jews? Did they change their views towards the Jews, or are they still anti-Semitic in Romania?
It's a tough question. Let's call it there's residual anti-Semitism because lack of education on the subject. It's residual. It's not going to die. It's always going to be there. The promoter of anti-Semitism in Romania in the past, before the war, was very strongly the Romanian church, the Orthodox church. They who worked with the Legionar promoted the pogroms against the Jews and kicking the Jews out. Although they didn't bother anybody, you saw them, they were northern Romania, but they turned against Romanians. Same thing happened in Hungary. not necessarily Romanians. There were also a right-wing fascist party in Hungary that came to power that persecuted the Jews. Same thing happened in other countries. Exception, Bulgaria. Bulgaria, the Archbishop of Bulgaria refused. The Germans told him to do the same thing, to go after the Jews in Bulgaria. He said no, he will not do that. He was summoned to Berlin, the Archbishop of Bulgaria. He went to Berlin. He met Hitler. He told him, you better do it or else. On his way back, he was poisoned and died because he didn't do it.
Wow.
The Bulgarian Jews survived.
How did your mother and aunt survive through the years, through the
Good
two
question. Yeah, my father was in concentration in the camps I mentioned to you about, and the women stayed behind because they took the men for work. North of Moldova, Romanian Moldova, the so-called kingdom, when you go into Bukovina, Bessarabia, they did a major Holocaust over there. They expelled, imprisoned, ghettos, or killed, executed, mostly sent to Transnistria. The 300,000 Jews came from there. On the Transylvanian side, the Hungarian side, most of them were sent to Auschwitz. Auschwitz took later to build. The Romanian Jews that were killed in Transnistria were basically shot, Holocaust by bullets, were shot, knives, hacked, whatever, or thrown into rivers. There was no, how do you call it, extermination camp like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and all those places. That was that. Another luck for Romanian Jews was that we were closest to the Russian border. So when the Russians started advancing after March 1943, Stalingrad, March 1943, when the Germans lost big time with Romanians in Stalingrad, they started collapsing backwards. And then the Russians started advancing. And Romania was one of the first countries that started liberating on their way to Berlin. Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, and so on and so on. And my father got liberated earlier than, say, Hungarians or Czechs, and survived, of course. But Romanians in the camp, they used them for work, slave labor. They weren't shooting them. In the north, they killed them all.
But was your mother and her sister in
the mother. The women were not taken. Sorry, I didn't answer your question. The women were not taken. The women stayed in town, and they wore the yellow star all through the war. They wore the yellow star. They worked in town. They cooked and so on. And as the armies were moving forward, as the Russian army was moving forward in August 1943 through Romania, they had to evacuate the town, and they moved to another town. It's called the evacuation period. The Jews were sent to different towns so that the Russian army, when they come through, they destroy everything on their way, whether it's they're hungry or whether they're just looking for women or all kind of stuff. So they evacuated the town, and of course when they found their homes empty or damaged and all that kind of stuff, that was normal fare for war. Yeah. But the women were in the town during the war. And another interesting story, I should not say that to a Jewish community, but my mother once snuck bacon in the house in Israel. She went to a store, I think a Christian store somewhere in Israel, and she got some bacon, and she brings the bacon to the table, and she says, it's lard actually, not even bacon. And she says, don't tell anybody this is bacon. I never saw bacon in my life before. Yeah. And I say, what's special about that? She said, we're not supposed to eat bacon. I know that. Why did you buy it then? I said, it's a memory from the war. Oh. We used to smuggle your father's camp bacon and lard for the men to survive the winter.
For sure.
We used to bribe the guards, collected money to bribe the guards, and we brought bacon.
Was she able to see your father when he was in the camp? Were they able to communicate?
Yes, she was able to communicate, yeah. Look, they even sent a telegram to Havana.
And they didn't shoot her, right?
No, it was a work. It was a slave labor camp. You know, you could go to the camp. The women went there. They bribed the guards. They carried the bacon there. They got bacon from the farmers, food, whatever. Probably not only that, but forget kosher. During the war, there's no kosher slaughterhouse.
That's true. At least they found a way to find each other.
Well,
Harry, you
they say
you are a source of knowledge. You are a source of knowledge and information. There is no end. We can stay with you as long as we can, and there is always something new that we would learn from you. You are
I'm
amazing.
passing on the
Thank you so much.
I'm passing only the information I received.
Did the Americans walk through Romania and those areas to liberate, or
Who?
not? The Americans, when they came,
No, no.
the Americans, the Allies.
Russian. No.
I see. They were
The Russians, Italy. The Americans went through Italy and France going north, and the Russians, or the Soviets actually, they went through that area all the way to Austria. They took Vienna, the Austrians, not the West, not the Americans, not the British or the French, and they stopped. East Germany, Romania became communist. Yugoslavia wasn't Soviet but was communist with Tito, and Hungary was communist. That was the division that Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt decided in Yalta towards the end of the war.
Harry, I was so stricken when you said that they they rounded up Jews and they killed them in the kosher slaughterhouse. What barbarian!
Yeah, it's terrible. I can't. You can read it on the internet. I can't. I don't want to describe it in a forum like that. What they did to them? Absolute torture.
Yeah, well, that's very well known all over Europe. This is the way it was.
Not like that. The Germans.
The Nazis, yeah.
No. The German soldiers kept a distance from this kind of behavior. The German soldiers,
yes.
The officers in there, and the Germans document everything. They said these Romanians. They wrote about the Romanians. They were barbaric the way they treated the Jews. No. The Germans didn't treat the Jews like that. They shot them, they killed them, but they didn't torture them. And I will not describe the torture.
I would like to thank you so much, Harry. We learned so much from you today, as usual. I would like to invite Lolo to sing for us something now, and then.
Hello, everybody. Well, Harry, first of all, I want to say that I caught the tail end of your meeting and your presentation, and it's like Gladys said, we can be here for the whole day and still continue listening. It's very fascinating. Hazaku Baruch. So I said to myself, what kind of song can one sing? If somebody is Yiddish or somebody is in English or French, I thought of Tumbalalaika, which is a Russian, a little bit Romanian, Ukrainian. Everybody likes this song. So here this is for you. Steht a Bocher unter Tracht, Tracht und Tracht a ganze Nacht. Wemmen zu nehmen und nicht verschämen, wemmen zu nehmen und nicht verschämen. Tumbala, 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 laika. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala. Tumbala-laika, spielbala-laika, tumbala-laika, freilich soll sein. A young man played his old balalaika while he tried to make up his mind. Who truly loved him, who should he choose? And how not to hurt the one he'd refuse. Tumbala, 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 laika. Tumbala, 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 laika. Tumbala, laika. Spielbala, laika. Tumbala, laika. Freilich soll sein. And everybody who there, just the simple words. Lie, 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 lie. Maurice, start dancing.
Tumbala, 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 tumbala,
balalaika. Freilich soll sein.
Bravo.
Bravo, Harry.
Our most beloved cantor.
You guys are the best.
Thank you so much. So now I would like to invite our friend, engineer Albert Herskovich, who will give us the closing remarks. And we thank you again, Harry Bolner, for the great, great speech. Albert Herskovich, bevakasha bechavod.
Thank you, Gladys. Thank you. And I'm honored and privileged to replace our president who couldn't make it today, to be the person to thank you, Harry, for an amazing presentation. I'm a fellow engineer like you, and I'm also, to answer your initial question, of Romanian ancestry on my paternal side, except that my ancestors at that time probably saw the writing on the wall and took a different approach and ended up in Egypt, where they lived very, very well and very happily. Unfortunately, until politics took over and we were forced to leave. But for the time that they lived in Egypt, it was wonderful and it was great. And when I hear the stories of what happened in Romania at that time, the pogroms and the killings, one thing I found out today from you is that there were 750,000 Jews living in Romania, and that surprised me. So thank you for teaching us, giving us a good lesson on geography, on history, on demographics of the Jewish population in Romania and Moldova. It was the most interesting and most informative presentation. And all I can say, I think we all learned something and we all enjoyed it. And I know it's the third time that you joined us. We want you to come back many, many more times. You're always welcome. So once again, toda rabba, and all the best to you. And thanks again on behalf of the Women's Learning Group, on behalf of everyone here present, and on behalf of myself. Toda rabba. Yitraot.
Toda rabba. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Gladys. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, everybody who joined us.